Pat Garrett. It's just one of those great names that calls to us from the pages of American history. He's known to most as the manhunting lawman, called in to bring order to New Mexico and bring William H. Bonney, aka Billy the Kid, to justice. But his life is far more interesting than that. It's a continuous rise and fall of fortunes. His life is a glaring reminder of the unforgiving apathy of the Old West. It's equal parts gold rush and gallows. It is simultaneously the hope of new beginnings and the crushing finality of unexpected endings. And in Garrett's life, the scales of fortune begin swinging from the very beginning. Born to wealthy English parents in Alabama, his family lost their Louisiana cotton plantation in the years following the Civil War. He was already riches to rags by the age of 18. He found work as a Texas buffalo hunter in the 1870s, but like all buffalo hunters during that time, he quickly hunted himself right out of business. He then moved on to New Mexico in 1878 and tried his hand at several business endeavors. He even tried to settle down, married a local girl who fell ill on their wedding night and died within a fortnight. Finally, in 1880, Pat Garrett was elected as Lincoln County Sheriff. Backed by some pretty big money, such as Captain Joseph C. Lee and Cattle King John Chisholm, he was elected on a reform ticket, and in no small part to restore order to New Mexico, where lawmen were scared to track down Billy the Kid. Accepting the job was no small act of courage, and word soon arrived from more than one group of outlaws to Garrett stating that he would be killed if he stood in their way. And it's no idle threat. A former Lincoln County sheriff and deputy had already been gunned down during the ongoing Lincoln County War. Garrett was there to sweep up the pieces and to cease the revenge killings. He was elected in November 1880, but Pat Garrett wouldn't officially take office until the new year. But that didn't stop the incumbent sheriff from deputizing him to help in cornering the kid. They captured him and the remaining members of his gang before Christmas at Stinking Springs during a particularly harsh winter. During the train transport back to Santa Fe, the route took them through Las Vegas, New Mexico, where one of the kid's gang was wanted for murder. Garrett had promised the captured men that they would arrive in Santa Fe safely, and so fended off a large lynch mob that had surrounded the train at the depot and even included local law enforcement. It was a moment that defined Garrett's grit and the integrity of his word. Billy the Kid was sentenced to hang at Mesilla by Judge Warren Bristol in April 1881, but didn't stick around to see the hangman's rope. Just 13 days later, he makes his legendary escape, murdering 2 deputies in the process. Garrett was again tasked with trailing Arizona's most dangerous criminal, and 3 months later, Billy the Kid lay slain on a Fort Sumner bedroom floor on a moonlit night. Afterward, Garrett was given this badge by Albert Jennings Fountain, the lawyer who had just defended Billy the Kid at Mesilla months earlier, and a man with a fascinating biography all his own. Fountain was a Civil War veteran, a heroic Indian Wars veteran, a customs collector in El Paso, a Texas senator, a Texas's lieutenant governor. He reinstated the Texas Rangers after the Civil War, and he fought in duels. He was a lawyer, a district attorney, a judge, a bilingual newspaperman, and a patron of the opera. Clearly, Fountain bore no ill will against the sheriff who had sent Billy to meet his maker, and gave him this Lincoln County Sheriff badge in thanks. The golden badge is still accompanied by its satin-lined, tooled leather case, and the back of the badge reads, "To Pat Garrett, with the best regards of A.J. Fountain, 1881." When this badge was last publicly sold in 2008, the badge alone brought over $100,000. The winning bidder quoted as saying, "I think it's a steal. It is an absolutely priceless piece of Western memorabilia, the only one of its kind in the world." While killing the kid that night brought Garrett his fame, the high water mark of his life was yet to come, as were many more instances of his rising and falling fortune in his remaining 26 years. After killing the kid, he declined to run again for sheriff so he could run for territorial council, which he lost. He ranched some. He chased cattle rustlers, he attempted some forays into an irrigation business, as well as several other respectable businesses, but never with the success he envisioned. He eventually went back into manhunting and served as the sheriff of Doña Ana County. Some people are just born for certain lines of work. In a twist of fate, he had been called to Doña Ana County to track down the disappearance of A.J. Fountain and his 8-year-old son. Fountain, of course, the man who had given him his golden Lincoln County Sheriff's badge. At Fountain's wagon, there were signs of a violent ambush, spent casings, pools of blood, but Fountain and his 8-year-old son were never seen again, and their bodies never found. Unfortunately for Garrett, law work didn't cover his growing debt built from his pile of failed business ventures and no small amount of gambling on his part. And once again, he chose not to seek re-election to sheriff, thanks to the combination of politics, low pay, and high hazard. But all this seemed to work in his favor when in 1901, no less than President Theodore Roosevelt nominated Garrett to serve as the customs collector in El Paso, the same position A.J. Fountain had once held. Garrett's name had been endorsed to TR by Arizona Governor Lew Wallace, who carried a great gratitude towards the lawman for having solved his Billy the Kid problem. No longer was Garrett a play-by-his-own-rules law dog. Garrett's new post brought this newfound prestige and legitimacy. He was one of 3 appointments by Roosevelt called the White House Gunslingers that included Bat Masterson, who has served as Deputy U.S. Marshal, and of Ben Daniels, the former Marshal of Dodge City, who was appointed as the U.S. Marshal now for the Arizona Territory. All 3 appointments were hotly contested by Roosevelt's political opponents, naturally, but TR himself was a former deputy sheriff, and he stuck by his choices. Garrett was confirmed to his new position on January 2nd, 1902, and within a year was presented this 41 caliber Colt 1877 Thunderer from his El Paso friends. It was shipped from Colt soft to be engraved and finished in New York at the M. Hartley Company, the latest reorganization of the renowned Schuyler, Hartley, and Graham. The scroll engraving stretches down almost the entirety of its barrel. Its frame, its cylinder, its recoil shield. It's received a gold-washed nickel finish from stem to stern, ending in a backstrap that reads, Pat F. Garrett from his El Paso friends. Those same El Paso friends elected to put silver grip panels on this Colt Thunderer. The right one reads, Customs Collector, around the right grip screw, and the left grip reads, Lincoln, Doña Ana, El Paso, detailing, of course, some of the most notable locations from Garrett's life. With a gun this thought through, perhaps there's no coincidence that it's from the same model widely said to have been carried by Billy the Kid. Glittering gold and silver clad Colt Thunderer truly marks the high point in a life filled with hills and valleys. Shortly after being appointed by Roosevelt, the two had a pretty dramatic falling out. During the 1905 Rough Riders reunion in San Antonio, where Garrett had been personally invited by the president, Garrett had Roosevelt pose for photos with a man who Garrett purported to be a respectable cattleman, but who was actually a fairly notorious saloon owner. Roosevelt was furious, and Garrett was not reappointed. Not long thereafter, in 1908, after several other ill turns of fate and some pretty significant financial difficulty, Garrett suffered the ultimate slight: shot in the back of the head. A land dispute turned assassination along the road to Las Cruces. It was the final low from which there could be no triumphant high. The unforgiving West had claimed just another victim. Since that time, the gun's provenance is long and very well detailed. In fact, it was one of at least 3 guns that Garrett had brought in for display at the Coney Island Saloon in El Paso. But when Garrett died in 1908, the saloon owner kept this gun as well as others, including Garrett's gun that had shot down Billy the Kid. It was the same saloon owner that had posed with Roosevelt. It took some time for his widow, Apollinaria Garrett, to reobtain her late husband's guns in a case that went all the way to the Texas Supreme Court in 1934, but reobtain them she did, though she wouldn't enjoy her success for long, passing just 2 short weeks later. Of course, since then, Garrett's gilt gun went into several prominent collections, has been featured in books and magazines, and was recently on loan to the NRA Firearms Museum in Springfield, Missouri. Today, Garrett is mostly remembered for his role in the life and death of Billy the Kid, but as with most things, the real history is a lot more colorful and interesting than just the sound bites. Real life happens between the headlines, and Pat Garrett's golden badge and his Colt are a testament to that remarkable life. It's the life of a manhunter, a gambler, an entrepreneur, a gunslinger, a presidential appointee, a buffalo hunter, a cowboy, a husband and a father, an incredible marksman, a sheriff, and a courageous man, seemingly born under a bad sign, that people turned to when the law required hard strength. That man is Sheriff Patrick Floyd Jarvis Garrett, and his legacy lives at Rock Island Auction Company.